What if the ugly duckling was never meant for children at all? What if its sorrow was not a gentle lesson in kindness, but the echo of something far older? Rituals of exile, scars of identity, memories of transformation, carved into the bones of humanity itself. A strange hatchling is born. Too different, too fragile, too ugly. The farmyard mocks it. The wild marshes reject it. Even the winter sky seems to conspire against it. The creature wanders alone, burdened not just by ugliness, but by exile. It does not belong. It is a shadow at the edge of every home, every flock, every family. And yet one day when spring returns, the exile looks into the water and finds it is no longer what the world was. What was despised becomes divine. What was cast out becomes untouchable. We are taught to hear this as a promise that beauty will come to those who suffer. But listen closely. Andersen's tale is only the surface. Beneath it lies an ancient truth that exile itself was once sacred, that the outcast was chosen to walk the path of transformation. So what if the ugly duckling is not about a bird at all? What if it is about us, our eternal fear of rejection, our hunger for rebirth, and our haunting suspicion that only through suffering can we truly change? Before we wander into the echoes of exile found in ancient myths, let us return just once to the tale as it is told. For only in hearing it as a story, soft, haunting, fragile, can we begin to peel away. A summer dawn in the farmyard. The air is thick with the smell of hay, the clucking of hens, the soft rustle of feathers. One by one, eggs crack open and golden ducklings stumble out, chirping, warm, alive. The mother weeing, but one egg does not break so easily. Larger than the rest, pale and strange. At last it cracks, and out tumbles, not a bright yellow chick, but something different. Its feathers are gray, its body awkward, its neck too long. The others pause, staring. Then comes the whisper. Ugly. Wrong. Not one of us. From that moment, the hatchling is not a child of the farm, but a stranger in his own home. The hens peck him, the ducks chase him, even the farmer's children mock his clumsy form. He runs to the marshes, thinking the wild will accept him. But there too voices rise. You do not belong. Autumn fades, winter descends. The world hardens into ice and silence. Alone, shivering by frozen ponds, the creature lowers its head, dreaming only of warmth. Even the hunter's dogs pass by, sparing him out of pity. It is exile without end, a season of despair stretched across an endless winter. And yet, spring returns. The ice shatters. Flowers bloom. The outcast, weary and thin, stumbles to a quiet lake. There, gliding across the mirrored surface, are swans, white, radiant, untouchable. He lowers his head to drink, and in the water he sees himself. No longer gray, no longer mocked. Wings stretch wide, glistening white. The exile has transformed. The ugly duckling was never a duck at all. We tell this to children as comfort, that those who suffer may one day shine. But listen carefully. The barnyard, the winter, the reflection in the lake, these are not merely details. They are symbols, fragments, echoes. And they whisper of something older, that exile itself was once sacred, that transformation is born only through rejection, and that the outcast has always carried within them the seed of the divine. The outcast who becomes something more is not confined to Andersen's Denmark. The pattern ripples outward across centuries, across continents. If we listen carefully, we can hear the ugly duckling's cry in the voices of gods, monsters, and sacred birds, each carrying the same wound, the same exile, the same impossible transformation. In Egypt, long before fairy tales, there was the Bennu bird. It was no duckling, its feathers burned with the light of the sun, but its story is strangely familiar. Born out of fire and ashes, the Bennu was a solitary creature, unwelcomed by the ordinary flocks of ibis and heron. It rose alone from decay, from the very death of the old world. Yet when it stretched its wings, it was not rejected but revered. Priests marked it as the soul of Ra himself, the eternal witness of time. Exile had become divinity. The lonely bird had become the measure of rebirth. Travel north to Greece, and you find a god cast down, not for feathers, but for form. Hephaestus, the divine smith, was hurled from Olympus by his own mother. Too lame, too ugly, too broken to sit among shining gods. He fell for a day and a night, and when he struck the earth, the heavens themselves trembled. But in exile, he learned the fire. In rejection, he forged mastery. He returned not as a cripple mocked, but as the hand that shaped the weapons of gods and the chains of Prometheus. The cast-out child had become the indispensable creator, and in the frozen sagas of the North, the theme turns darker still. Loki the trickster fathered children who bore the mark of monstrosity. A wolf too vast a serpent, too endless, a daughter with half her face alive, half rotted with death. The gods saw them and recoiled. Too dangerous, they said. Too ugly, too strange. They cast Fenrir into chains, hurled Jormungandr into the sea, and banished hell to the underworld. Yet their exile did not erase them, it magnified them. In the twilight of the world, it was these exiles who would break free, swallowing sun and sky, reshaping the destiny of gods themselves. Egypt, Greece, the North. Three cultures worlds apart, yet bound by a single thread. The outcast who cannot belong, and whose suffering is not an end, but a threshold. The Bennu bird rises alone from ashes radiant. Hephaestus limps back from rejection, crowned in fire and craft. Loki's children banished return as forces of fate itself. Each is a shadow of the ugly duckling. Or perhaps the duckling is their final echo, a child's fable that remembers what ritual once proclaimed exile is the crucible of transformation. But this raises a question. Could these similarities be mere coincidence? Or are they fragments of an older pattern, scattered through human memory, like feathers in the wind? When archaeologists sift through ancient tombs and broken temples, they find traces carvings of birds alone at the edge of flocks, myths, written on clay shards, rituals of casting out before rebirth. These are not Anderson's inventions. They are whispers from a time when being different was not just a burden, but a sacred mark. And so we are left with a puzzle. Why does the exile appear again? Why does every culture remember the same wound, the same transformation? Perhaps the answer lies not only in myth, but in the earth itself, in the graves, the fragments, the symbols that archaeology has unearthed. For buried beneath the soil, just like in our stories, the outcast waits to be seen again. Legends whisper, myths echo. But the earth, when we dig into it, also remembers. And when archaeologists brush soil from stone, when they pry open the chambers of the dead, they find evidence that speaks in the same language as the ugly duckling, the language of exile, of transformation, of beings set apart. In the dry sands of Egypt, burial chambers sometimes carry the mark of the bird. Painted not in flocks, not soaring together, but alone its wings, outstretched, isolated at the corner of the tomb. Egyptologists puzzle at these solitary birds, noting their distance from the rest. Some suggest it is the Bennu, the bird of rebirth. Others see in it a symbol of a soul wandering the boundary between life and death. To be set apart was not shame, it was passage. Further north, clay tablets unearthed in Mesopotamia speak of children born different, marked by deformity or strange appearance. Rather than being cast into obscurity, some were taken by priests raised within temple walls. Their exile from the ordinary world transformed them into intermediaries, guardians of divine thresholds. The same motif the strange one rejected, set aside only to become sacred. And in the peat bogs of Europe, archaeologists have found something even more chilling: bodies deliberately placed outside the settlements, sometimes bound, sometimes adorned with feathers or animal masks. Were these criminals or offerings? The evidence suggests something older, a ritual of exclusion, where an individual was set apart, banished from the human flock, only to be marked forever in death as a bridge to the gods. Even the simplest artifacts echo this pattern. A Bronze Age pendant carved in the shape of a swan, found buried not with kings, but with the forgotten. Those without titles, those denied the ornaments of power. Why? Perhaps because the swan itself was not a creature of kingship, but of exile. A reminder that beauty is not born in palaces, but in those cast out who wander the cold until transformation comes. Andersen never saw these tombs. He never brushed away the soil from ancient pendants or pieced together shards of Mesopotamian clay. Yet somehow his tale carries the same memory. Perhaps not from books, but from the collective dream of humanity, those deep ancient images that refuse to die. The Ugly Duckling is not invention. It is survival. A modern fragment of a truth once written in rituals, once carved into stone, once buried with the dead. So what do these findings tell us? That exile was never only punishment, it was initiation. The outcast was the one chosen to carry the wound that makes transformation possible. The myths knew it. The graves repeat it. And the fairy tale whispered to children still remembers it. But if archaeology shows us the pattern carved in bone and stone, symbolism shows us the soul beneath it. The barnyard, the winter, the reflection in the water, these are not merely details in a story. They are signs, veils over ancient meanings. To read The Ugly Duckling is to read a ritual in disguise. So let us turn now, not to earth or artifact, but to the symbols themselves. What do they mean? What do they demand of us? And why, after centuries, do we still feel their weight pressing against our own reflection? If archaeology shows us bones and feathers, symbolism reveals the pulse that runs beneath them. For The Ugly Duckling is not only a tale, it is a tapestry of symbols. Each element, each image carries a weight far older than Andersen's pen. The barnyard is the world of conformity. Its fences are not only wood, but the boundaries of society itself. Within those walls, sameness is safety. To be different is to be pecked, mocked, driven away. The barnyard is every family, every tribe, every community that fears the outsider. And so the hatchling's rejection is not mere cruelty. It is the ritual act of casting out the other. The marshes and the wild are the liminal places. Neither farm nor home, neither safety nor belonging. Here the duckling wanders as a ghost too strange for the wild birds, too weak for the predators to bother with. This is the realm of trial, the place where identity dissolves and reshapes. Every culture knows this space, deserts where prophets wander, forests where heroes lose themselves. Underworlds where the soul is tested. The marsh is exile's shadow. Then comes the winter. Cold, merciless, endless. This is death without burial, a silence that gnaws at the bones. But winter too is a symbol. It is the grave before rebirth, the necessary darkness that cracks open the possibility of spring. The duckling does not simply suffer, it undergoes initiation. Its body is starved, but its soul is tempered. And then the reflection in the water. Perhaps the most haunting image of all. For transformation is not given from without. It is discovered within. The duckling does not wait for the farm to accept it, nor for the wild to recognize it. The truth is revealed when it sees itself. The water, a mirror between worlds, whispers, "You were never what they said. You were always this." The swan is not the reward. The swan is the unveiling. Thus, the tale becomes more than comfort. It is a ritual encoded in symbols, the casting out, the wandering, the death, winter, the reflection, rebirth. It tells us that beauty is not surface, it is transformation. That belonging is not granted, it is discovered. That exile, painful as it is, may be the only path to transcendence. And what is the swan grace? Yes. Power, yes. But deeper still, it is the truth that ugliness itself was never the flaw. The exile was not a mistake of birth. it was chosen. The swan is not a new creature, but the old one unveiled. But symbols do more than whisper of birds and barns. They turn their gaze back upon us. For if the ugly duckling is exile, winter, reflection, rebirth, then what of us? What does it mean that we are drawn to this pattern again and again across every culture and every age? Perhaps it is not only a story of one bird. Perhaps it is the mirror of humanity itself. So what is the ugly duckling truly? It is not just the sorrow of a small bird. It is the sorrow of humanity itself. For who among us has not felt the sting of the barnyard? The cold glance, the whispered judgment, the unspoken decree you do not belong. Some carry it as children mocked for what they cannot change. Some as adults banished from circles, communities, nations. Exile is not only physical, it is the wound of being unseen, unheard, unwanted. And yet, within this wound lies something profound. The tale whispers that exile is not the end. It is the crucible. Only those who have walked through rejection know the taste of transformation. Only those who have endured winter understand the meaning of spring. The swan, then, is not a promise of beauty for the weak. It is a truth about becoming.
So what is the ugly duckling?
That what the world despises may hold within it the very key to transcendence. The barnyard is society. The winter is suffering. The reflection is self-knowledge. And the swan is the soul unveiled. This is why the story haunts us across cultures. It is not about animals, but about us. About the human need to transform rejection into meaning.
We have to
About the
figure
hunger
something
to
out.
believe that suffering is not wasted, that in being cast out, we are being prepared for something greater. But the tale also warns us, for not all outcasts survive the winter. Not every exile finds a lake to mirror their truth. Many vanish in the cold, unheard, unseen, forgotten. The myth comforts us with its ending, but it leaves unspoken the countless lives that do not rise. Perhaps that is why the story clings so tightly to us, because it tells us what we wish to believe, even as we fear it may not be true. And so, we are left with a question. What if exile is not an accident, but a necessity? What if the wound of rejection is not weakness, but the first step in a ritual as old as time? To be cast out, to wander, to suffer, to see oneself to become. The ugly duckling is not a fable. It is a mirror. And when we look into it, we see not feathers, but our own reflection, awkward, rejected yearning, and waiting for the moment when the truth will finally surface. But if this is true, if exile and transformation lie hidden in the stories we give our children, then what else hides there? How many more bedtime tales are not gentle dreams, but mirrors of ancient wounds, rituals of rebirth disguised as simple fables? And if the ugly duckling is our reflection, then perhaps the next tale we tell is not about birds or princesses or magic at all. Perhaps it is about us. If the ugly duckling is not a child's comfort, but a ritual in disguise, then what of the other tales we tell? Snow White lying still in her glass coffin, awaiting not a kiss, but resurrection. Sleeping Beauty cursed to slumber, her long silence echoing ancient rites of death and renewal. Cinderella bound to a fragile slipper, her identity revealed not by chance, but by trial. Each story we think we know may not be what it seems. They are not harmless bedtime whispers, but fragments of something older, deeper masks worn by truths our ancestors dared not speak plainly. So if even a lonely bird wandering through winter can conceal an ancient rite of exile and transformation, what else lies hidden, waiting for us to uncover? Perhaps every fairy tale is not a dream but a tune, not fantasy but memory, not sweetness but survival. And the question that lingers darklings is this. When you look into the next story's mirror, will you still see a tale for children? Or will you see yourself?